What if I told you that your story has the power to make our world a better place? Would you believe me? Would it make you want to share your story more? Well, my name is Matt Story, so I may be biased, but join me as I sit with leaders that are doing just that, sharing their stories of unique lived experiences that they've turned into superpowers that they now use to make a positive impact on our world. Welcome to another episode of What's Your Story podcast. I'm really excited to share another dope story with you from another dope leader. But before we get into that, I wanted to talk about something that I've been thinking about of late. And it's not something new. It's something I've heard in different articulations, different phrasings, different quotes. But it's this idea of we only go this way once, so let's do it well. And I went in and I tried to find, is there an original author? Or is there someone that is, quote unquote, the mother or father of this phrasing? And it seems to it's generated in a few different ways that have attributed to the idea, but there's not one particular person. So I can't attribute just one person, but I know a lot of people have said similar phrasings and had similar meanings in their words in this territory. And so as I thought about this idea of only going this way once, and doing it well is this idea of whether it's, back in the day, YOLO, or this idea of leaving all on the field, or this idea of let's give it our best try, the good college effort. But this one for me, it really brought to life this idea that we only are in this space and this place for right now. And there's this idea of the presence that we need to have of really owning the places and spaces that we're in. And for me, that just, it gives you a lot of focus, but it also gives you a lot of intentionality, which I think sometimes can be one of the probably biggest things I struggle with. Many of us spend time focused on what happened yesterday or what happened in the past or, what happened last year. And we spend a lot of time looking in that rearview mirror. But then other times we spend a lot of time looking to the future and we're planning for, that next big trip or that next big, meeting or the next big opportunity. And we're looking forward. But by doing either of those, it really makes it hard to live in the here and now. And one of the things that my wife and I spend a lot of time talking about is, we got all these plates that we're trying to keep spinning around us with work and family and, our personal health and interest and friends and all the things that you want to make sure you're attending to. It can be very hard to keep all that balanced. And honestly, I think it's very kind of unrealistic to think of it as balancing. It's more of how do you integrate it? And for me, one of the things that we've tried to do is really keeping the main thing the main thing. And for me, that really resonates with this idea of we're only going this way once. We're only going to be in this place and in this space once. So how can I ensure that I'm giving it my all? How can I ensure I'm giving it my attention, my focus? And that could be as big as, hey, this is the one shot we got at this opportunity, or it can be as small as, hey, this is the one time that I'm dedicating time to spending with our little 6-year-old, and we're going to sit here and read this story. And so for me, I think it just gives a lot of perspective on not necessarily worrying, am I going to make the right decision, am I going to make the wrong decision, but just really bringing that intentionality and that focus into the spaces and the places that I convene in, and ensuring that I allow myself to be present and not get caught up in what happened yesterday. Also not getting too focused on what's going to happen in the future, but really to think about the here and now. My guest on the pod this week is a CTO, a speaker, and a visionary founder. And her mission is to champion the empowerment and amplification of women and underrepresented minorities within the tech landscape and beyond. And I'm really looking forward to hearing more about her story. So please welcome Elaine Montilla to the show.
Thanks for having me, Matt.
I knew I was going to trip that up. I knew I was going to fall over that. But I am happy to have you on and really appreciate you taking the time. Before we get into hearing more about this amazing mission you have for yourself and all the great work you've been able to do, I'd love it if you could just take us back and maybe share a story about what little Elaine was like.
Oh, that would be little Elaine. Little Elaine, believe it or not, was a very shy young girl, very sensitive. If you would raise your voice, you would see tears come down my face. I was very sensitive to loud people, loud noises. And when people would come visit me at home, I would hide in my room. Even if it was family, I was afraid of people. And my mom will look at me today and say, I cannot believe you do public speaking. You're like a different person. I was very shy. I'm still sensitive. I'm a very sensitive person. That hasn't changed, but the shyness has changed. I love people and talking to people.
Hmm. Interesting. And I'm sure we'll unpack a little bit of how you've turned that sensitivity into a skill. Because I know when we talked earlier, you talked about being an empath and being able to just feel
Yes.
people, which I can imagine that's overwhelming if you're constantly taking in all of those feelings and understanding what, those
Yeah.
around you are doing. But, another part of your story, which again, for me was just fascinating as I've listened to it and done my research is, so you moved to the U.S. at 16 after finishing high school in the Dominican Republic and you didn't speak English. So I'm curious, like, what did that experience teach you about yourself, but also your ability to adapt?
Yeah, it was really tough. I can tell you that I graduated high school on a Friday, and Saturday I was on a plane moving to New York.
Wow.
And I felt like I gained, it's not only about a new name, like I didn't even know that my name sounded differently in English. I feel like I got a new identity because I had to react to now this new name that I did not understand. I had to learn a new language. One of the things that I learned was the profound value of community and surrounding yourself with people who have your best interests at heart, with people who will support you, with people who would encourage you. I can tell you that my first semester going to college, not speaking English, I took a lot of ESL courses. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I can't do this. There is no way I could do this. I don't understand half the things this teacher is talking about. And I had a lot of people around me saying, no, you'll get this. It's fine. Don't worry. My Latinx community, of course. I would be lost without them. I clearly remember being guided by my community. I would be lost if it wasn't for them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's beautiful. I'm curious. You said you graduated on Friday, got on a plane on Saturday. Like, what was driving that urgency?
My mom, well, I have to go back a lot, Matt. My dad died when I was 7 years old. And so I had a single mom with three children. And my mom knew that education was our ticket to having a better life.
Hmm.
And so she planned this for a while. She moved to the US in her 40s, mind you. She did not speak English either. And so for her, it was really important that we can be in a better place where there was less corruption than the corruption that is still in my country today, unfortunately. And so she saw this as a huge opportunity, and I'm forever grateful to her
Hmm.
for making that tough decision to help all three of us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, did you have, obviously education was important, but did you have an idea of like what you wanted to be when you grew up?
No idea. I can tell you that I got into computers because of my brother, my oldest brother. He was always opening computers and he would replace hard drives and I would watch him with his friends and I'd be like, oh, what are they doing? He was a gamer too.
Hmm.
So I remember being a curious child. I'm still a curious person today. That's one of my superpowers. And I had no notion of this is only for men. You don't know what you're getting yourself into. I just wanted to learn what he was learning. And so that's what got me to go into computers initially, just
Hmm.
watching him.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of cool. You didn't have any self limits on it and you saw him doing it. You're like, well, if he can do it, I can do anything my brother can do. And you kind of jumped
I
into it
know.
eyes wide open versus letting the world come in and tell you early on, like, oh, you can't do that. Or what, these are the reasons that,
Oh, I was
you know,
I think I was very lucky that I was not aware of all of that because a lot of young girls that I meet today are so aware of it and it's very intimidating to them.
yeah.
I do remember growing up looking at the flight attendants and thinking, oh, that's cool. Maybe that's something I could do one day. But it was just a thought. It never moved from that.
Yeah. So as I was, looking at your long list of recognitions throughout your career, and you've been honored as the top 100 outstanding LGBTQ plus executive role model by Yahoo Finance. You've been recognized as one of the top 100 women in tech by Technology Magazine, and also awarded the HITEC 100 Hispanic Technology Leaders in 2024. So I'm curious, where have you pulled the confidence from to show up as your full self? Because those aren't like those embrace who you are as a full person in terms of what you've been
Mm.
awarded for. And so where have you pulled to be able to show up as who you are versus hiding parts to be able to receive that type of recognition?
Yeah, I can tell you it has definitely been a journey. And I mentioned my mother, just watching my mom come to a new country in her 40s. My mom used to work at a factory at night so that she can send money back home. And knowing what she'd went through, one of the things that I tell myself is the least I could do for my mom is be successful, whatever successful means. And I had her as an example of what you can get if you work really hard. And so always looking at her and watching her is what in a way show me what's possible for me, because what was possible for me is not something that I could see on a TV show. It's not something that I could watch on television. We didn't have a lot of role models. I didn't have women who were Latina, lesbian, immigrant, and in the C-suite, to be honest with you. So I didn't have any of that. I had my mom, and I had her resilience constantly telling me, look at what I was able to achieve in my 40s. And I brought you here when you were before you were 20. And so please take advantage of that. And so it was a challenge for sure. I can tell you that initially I felt like I didn't belong anywhere. I felt like I had an accent just to begin with. My accent felt like something that divided me from other people. I had very curly hair and I felt like I didn't belong and people didn't sound or look like me, especially in technology. And so it was definitely a challenge. But I think my spiritual journey and watching my mom are the two things that really helped me get through that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's interesting to think about parents specifically and their ability to prepare you for something that they've never experienced. And I think there's a lot of power in that because again, I I grew up single mom and I
Mm,
remember thinking my mom can do everything because she did everything. And it was like literally I saw her do everything. She went to work, she worked well, she moved up the corporate ladder, she was at every basketball game. We never went for asking for anything. Like did we have everything we wanted? No. But we never it was never
mhm,
like we didn't have something we needed. And she was always there when it mattered. And it's just funny how those like it's almost like values they instill in you can then be transferred into that C suite. They can be transferred into those leadership roles where maybe our mothers didn't know necessarily how to navigate them, but they gave you the playbook to
mhm.
say, hey, I don't know when you're going to use this, but here it is. I don't know if that resonates with you.
Yeah, and you know what happens, especially when you're an immigrant? Giving up is not an option. It's just not an option. It's nowhere on my list of options of things that I could do.
Yeah.
And so for me, I always knew that I had to work harder than everyone around me for people to take me seriously. One, because I'm a female, and two, because I've always looked younger than I am. And so I went through a lot of microaggressions and bias where people would think that I wasn't ready to move to the next level or to have the next position. And so I always knew that I had no option but to keep going and to educate myself, which is what my mom gave me without even knowing. I don't even know if she knew, like you said, that that was going to change my life, just knowing how she felt about education. So sometimes they do it unconsciously, but I'm grateful for it.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned microaggressions, and I do want to talk about that because, again, you've been in a lot of rooms where you're the only in like a
Mm.
number of things that of how you identify, and I'm sure you've had to face a number of those. And when I think about them, it's less of like, oh my gosh, you shouldn't do this, you're a horrible person. It's more of like, let's talk about it as like business people. Like, there's a cost to the organization when that is in the culture of the workplace. And so, what has been your experience with encountering microaggressions and being able to still move forward? Again, you mentioned giving up wasn't a choice, but there's certain things that you deal with it. You're just like, how do I navigate this? And what do I do when that happens and how people treat you? And they may know it, they may not know it. I'm just curious what's been your experience with overcoming?
Yeah, it's been a journey. And I think sometimes companies don't realize how much it affects someone's engagement and creativity and commitment. One, not being able to be fully yourself, and two, always feeling like you need to defend yourself because you don't know what's coming around the corner. I went through a lot of that. I just to give you a few examples, some of the things that I would hear would say, "Oh my God, you," because people would talk to me on the phone a lot, and then when they would see me, they would say, "Oh my God, Elaine, you don't look like a CIO." I was a CIO before being a CTO, and sometimes people don't even think that it is negative. Sometimes people don't even know that this is a microaggression, and so I like spending time educating others. But even saying you don't look like a CTO, it's something that I still would hear today.
Right.
Some people think that this ends when you make it to the C-suite. It does not. I still face a lot of that today. You are so articulate to be Latina. It's something that I've heard a few times, even though I still have an accent, which I love. And I had meetings, Matt, where vendors would come in and address one of my VPs, thinking that one of them is the CTO or the CIO instead of me. And initially, to be honest with you, I used to get upset. I used to get upset initially because it's something that happens over and over and over again. And you get to a point where it's like, come on, like seriously, it's
Yeah.
2024. Why are we still doing this today? But then he switched to having compassion. I'm telling you, my spiritual journey has been part of my career all along, and it's made me the person I am today. I have a lot of compassion for others. I have a lot of compassion for myself. And I choose wisely when I want to address an issue or not, because I don't always have the energy to do it. And so now I feel like I'm wiser. I know myself so well that those words don't affect me like they did in the past. But that only comes with years of experience and actually going through it and facing it and feeling ashamed sometimes at how other people around you react when these things happen. It's not fun. And I'm hoping that we get to a point where maybe we'll change the culture that we're living in.
Yeah, I was just having a conversation the other day with my wife about awareness. And I think sometimes if we're not aware of the things we say or how we move or how we operate, we don't understand the impact that that has on another person. So I agree with you that it is important to make people aware because I'm one of those people that I always want to assume positive intent and assume that it's a lack of awareness and it's not coming from a malicious place. But that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. And it also doesn't mean that, as you said, there's an energy that it takes to be able to address, make people aware, to talk about why that is what it is, that you don't always want to be the person expending that energy on that because you have a job. There's a reason that you're in that room. But yeah.
Yeah, it's exhausting. The other thing that I would say about that is that I see it as our responsibility to educate ourselves. And so I think it's sometimes okay to say I was not aware of that, but it's not okay if it's repeated and if you don't take the time to say, you know what, let me watch a documentary, let me read a book, let me listen to this new podcast so that I can understand where people are coming from. I have right now close to 400 employees and they come from all over the world. And I take the time to understand what are we celebrating this week? Diwali. Okay, what does that
Yeah.
mean? Oh, light. And okay, let me read more about it. Is there a movie that I can watch? I'm intentional about connecting with other human beings, and it takes a lot of effort and work. And I think that's the problem that not everyone has the time or wants to make the time to
Yeah.
understand it all.
100%. And that it's a good segue because in 2020, you started Five Time Minority. And so I'm curious if you could tell us about what it is, but also what led you to start it and what impact have you seen over these past few years since actually making that another thing that you bring to this world?
Yeah, I remember going into rooms like you mentioned where I was the only woman. Even in college, I remember taking a C++ course and looking around and it was only three of us. And so I decided to do something about it. And because I love education so much, I decided to create a blog. And I told myself, okay, let's start with a blog. Let me share what I know. Because the other thing that I noticed, Matt, is that there was so much information that was not shared with other women.
Yeah.
And I was surprised that I knew some things that other women did not know, especially as I was making my way up to the C-suite. And I was like, well, we have to tell them. Like someone has to share everything related to politics and,
Yeah.
microaggressions and all this other stuff. So it started as a blog. Then the opportunity came for a TEDx talk, and that's when I decided, okay, I can do more. Let me make this into a company, so that I can educate others. And so our mission is to elevate the voices of women in tech through education. And I create a lot of content on Instagram and LinkedIn and Twitter so that I can help others understand what we are going through, understand what I went through, understand the statistics about how many women we have in tech, understand what's keeping women out of tech and what is making them leave. And so I'm passionate about it because I get so many emails and so many messages, mostly from women who would watch my TEDx talk and say, oh my God, I can finally see someone that looks like me or sounds like me or has an accent like me and made it to the C-suite twice. And they can relate with my story because I know I'm not speaking from a book that I read. I'm speaking about the things that I'm going through, even
Yeah.
still today. And so I'm very passionate about it. And I spend as much time as I can. I still have a full-time job, so I use my nights and weekends to dedicate some time to fight X minority.
Yeah, it's funny. People always ask me like, where do you find time for the podcast? You have a job, you have a family, blah blah blah. And for me, I don't have time not to do it. And
Yes.
when you've been given, to your point, access, you've been given information, you've been educated amongst these things, you have to pay that forward. Like that's the only way to give back to those people that opened the door for you or gave you a little bit of insight. And so I just think it's like, it's not about a time in, time out type of thing. It's more of like, there's too much of a responsibility on me to do this work.
You said it so well because sometimes people say, where did you get the energy to do all this stuff? And what people don't understand, and I can see that you think the same way as I do, I get energized
Hmm.
when I do this work. It's
Hmm.
the opposite. It doesn't take energy away from me, it energizes me. And also, I see it as a responsibility. I had amazing mentors and sponsors, and I know the difference that it made with my career and my life. And I want to be able to do that for others now that I'm in a position where I'm able to do so.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious, you already gave us one. You said curiosity, but do you have other things that you say are superpowers of yours?
Hmm. I would say that my uniqueness, my authenticity is one of my superpowers. I remember when I first moved to this country, I used to feel like my accent was getting in the way. I used to feel like being the only one in the room was a problem, and I don't see it that way anymore. I see it being the only one in the room now is a superpower because I will make sure you pay attention to me.
Hmm.
Having my curly hair is a superpower. Having an accent is a superpower. Understanding more than one language is a superpower. So it's amazing how it switched from 20 years ago of now knowing that what makes me me is the best thing because that's what I'm giving to other people and no one else has it.
Yeah.
It's just me. So my authenticity, I would say.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. It's like what makes you distinct is really what sets you apart, is where you should lean in. Because if you're in that room, there's a reason you're in the room. And if you're the only one that's going to think that idea, have that thought, you have to offer it up. You can't just wait and say, "Oh, I should have said this afterwards," because no one else is thinking it. And so
Yeah.
again, it does set you apart. It is a superpower. And you said something that
Yeah.
my wife is super into language, and so she wants our girls to speak all the languages under the sun. And I think, I don't know, I didn't appreciate it until meeting her, the power of language and what it allows you to do. Because again, being an American, born in America, when you travel and it's like the typical American experience is like, oh, why can't they speak English? And it's like you could, there's like this bravado and whatnot, and people automatically assume that, oh, if I talk louder, they'll understand it. And I think that we can sometimes not realize not only the curiosity, the intellect, the humanity that goes into being able to communicate in different ways with different people. It's actually an unlock. Now, I say that being only able to speak English and más o menos on a little bit of Spanish, but I just think that's something that we can sometimes not value enough. And I could probably go through many of other things, but you hit on that as being a superpower that I think we sometimes don't give people enough credit for, especially in the business world. And thinking
Yeah,
about global organizations.
I love traveling, and because I speak Spanish, it is so much easier for me to understand Italian and Portuguese.
Mm-hmm.
And I can hear it and see, even if I don't know the word, I understand where it's coming from, and I'm able to navigate all of that. And the same with French, because a lot of the words are pronounced the same way. And when it comes to the workplace, my goodness, I mean, there are so many people that get inspired by my emails when I start by saying hola. I do
Mm-hmm.
that all the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And instead of thank you, sometimes I would say gracias
Mm-hmm.
on an email at work with a
Yep.
whole bunch of people included in it.
Yep.
And so sometimes we don't even see how we are helping other people understand what's possible for them or inspiring them because of one little thing that we do. Even when I do public speaking, I always say gracias at the end because I know I'm honoring so many people that are behind me, with me
Yeah.
constantly, or who paved the way for me to be here.
Yeah. Yeah. You're also setting that new standard of what is professional, because that is as professional as English, and like being able to connect with someone in what may be their native language or a language that they're in love with and they feel a close bond with you on, that is another form of connection. I'm curious though,
Yeah.
what would you say has been your mama I made it or your greatest achievement so far?
I made it. Um, I am not very connected to material things, but I can tell you that buying my mom an apartment is my greatest achievement. Making sure that she's not worried about paying rent is my greatest achievement. And I don't think anything personal can top that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it. I've made it. That's when I say I've made it. My mom is happy. That's good. I've made it.
Hands down. Hands down. It makes sense. On the
Yeah.
other side, what would you say has been your biggest mistake?
Mistake. Huh. I'm not sure I will use the word mistake, Matt, because
Okay.
I feel that I am always growing and always learning something about myself from whatever happens or whatever is in front of me. I could say that one of the lessons that maybe has taken me a long time to get, it's probably not taking full ownership for my happiness and putting that outside, putting that on other people, putting that on other things. It's taking me a while to understand that it is me, 100%. It's just me, and anything that I get beyond that is actually extra. It's like overflowing, like a glass that's overflowing with water.
Yeah.
And sometimes I I've been waiting for someone else to do that for me, and it's a lesson that it keeps getting repeated, and I'm hoping that now I get it and I can stick to it. That I'm giving myself enough love and taking care of myself, and especially the this little Elaine, and making sure that I'm protecting her and I'm protecting myself, and not waiting for someone else to save me because there is nobody coming.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. So you shared a couple of stories both here and when we connected earlier. You talked about, dealing with feeling like you had an accent. You actually stopped talking for a little bit of time. You talked about dealing with having curly hair, and I would presume that there were fears around those things that made you different. that kind of made you cover up, made you not show up in a certain way. I'm curious, like if you were to advise someone on like how do you deal with fears or how do you handle fears along your journey to overcome them? Again, I know giving up isn't an option.
Yeah.
You already gave us that, but like what would be those tips for like navigating a fear? Because I believe that sometimes we can put self-inflicted things on us because we're scared of an
Yeah.
outcome that actually may not be true. And so there's this idea of what's a fear versus truly what is something that can hurt us. And sometimes what we're afraid of can't actually hurt us. And so I'm just curious, how have you navigated that? Or what would you
Mm.
say to someone that may be dealing with a fear right now?
Yes. Matt, I can talk about that for hours. The first thing that I would say, I work remote now, but when I worked in my office, I had a sign at the door. And it just reminded me of that right now. And the sign said, "Don't believe everything you think." And one of the things that I learned through my spiritual journey is how to be the observer of my life and how to watch my thoughts instead of letting my thoughts run my life. You tell me if I'm getting too spiritual.
No, 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 no.
This is something that I am practicing daily. I practice mindfulness daily. I'm a very spiritual person. I meditate twice a day. I journal. And one of the things that I learn is how to observe my thoughts and question them. Because we all grow up with a lot of conditioned thinking that came
Mm,
from television and commercials and church and your parents. And you have to decide for yourself, is it true? Is that something that I believe today? So I've been going through a process of unlearning a lot of things that I learned growing up. And I question my thoughts. Do I believe that? Is it true? I don't know if you know Byron Katie, but she has a process of asking your thoughts questions so that you can decide for yourself if it makes sense or not. The second thing that I would say, and I went through this when I started learning public speaking because I used to be very shy.
mm,
And I was really scared of speaking in front of anyone. And the thing that I learned and that helped me the most is learning how to be comfortable being uncomfortable
mhm.
and just letting the feeling be there and feel it and speak to it, but don't do anything. Just let it be there. And so before I go on any stage, I still have that same feeling today, but I tell myself instead of I'm scared, I say I'm excited. So I change the words that I'm using. And I always say, don't worry, I'm fine. I got this. We're going to go through this together and you're going to come with me. Because initially, what I used to do is try to make it go away,
Mhm.
but it's not going anywhere. You
Mm.
just gotta bring it with you and do
Yeah.
whatever you need to do with the fear. And that's something that I mentioned during my TEDx talk also. So I've learned to be friends with fear and talk to it and have compassion for it and for myself. And that has really helped me a lot.
I love that. I love that. It's funny because I think those are human feelings of when something is important, we get that reaction. And similar to you, like anytime I'm about to public speak, I do get a little bit of that angst. I have to remind myself, to your point, it's because I'm excited. It's because I have something to
Yeah.
share and I want to get this out to the people that are going to be listening. And you're right, it doesn't go away. And if it does go away, then I need to think about like, why am I doing this? Because obviously I'm not excited about it anymore. Um, and
Right.
and so that there's something to actually, I like the idea of like sitting with fear and asking it questions and also questioning why you think. I'm not as much of a meditator because I just can't do it. My wife tries to get me to do it, but journaling I can do. And I believe that's truly where you don't know what you think until you write. Because there's so many thoughts that come in our head, and we're not sure. Like, is that my thought? Is that a thought because I watched something? Is that a thought because someone said something to me? But when you write, that's your thought. And like being able to sit with that and then come back to it later and say, oh, wow, I can't believe I thought that last week, or I can't believe I thought that last year. I think there's so much power in like being able to track how our thoughts are
Yeah.
not, they're not set in stone. They move, they morph based on more information, more life, more experience. So I'm a huge fan of all the things you said, even the ones I haven't adopted yet.
Yes. Can I share a quick tip with you?
Yeah.
Something that I started doing recently. I love playing with AI. and I've been playing with ChatGPT. And what I did is I set up one of my sessions, my windows, and I get prompts for my journaling every night before I go to bed. And I have a conversation with it. It
Hmm.
knows a lot about me. And it's been amazing how it's helping me with my journaling, especially if you don't like doing it or if you're not used
Yeah.
to doing it. It randomly gives me prompts every night. And right before I go to bed, I journal about it, whatever it's telling me to do. And it's
Yeah.
been so much fun. So I hope your
Yeah.
listeners try it because I
Yeah.
loved it.
That's a great idea. Great idea. So I believe that you can't inspire other people unless you're inspired yourself. So, what are you currently reading, listening to, watching that you're drawing inspiration from?
I love podcasts. I listen to probably 3 or 4 podcasts every day because I have my dog, and when I go for a jog or a walk, I'm always listening to something. I love Women at Work from HBR, the Harvard Business Review.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm always learning something new when I listen to it. I love listening to We Can Do Hard Things from Glennon Doyle. I don't know if you're familiar with her
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
work.
Yep.
It helps me be educated about different topics, but also she's such a spiritual person. She connects with that side of me. What am I reading? I recently ordered the new book from Trevor Noah. I have it right here. It's called Into the Uncut Grass. Look at this. And I'm always amazed by children's book. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like there is so much that we can learn from it. I didn't start it, but I already know that I'm gonna be inspired by him because I love his podcast.
Yeah.
Those are some of the things that I'm doing. I like reflecting a lot, and journaling helps me with that. Plus a few podcasts and a few books.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I would describe you after our time, limited time spent together, as someone that's in integrity with themselves. And I think that that is an unlock for being successful, happy, impactful, to, feel like what you're doing matters. Any tips or things that you haven't already mentioned that you would give to others to get to that place of feeling like no matter what you're doing, no matter where you are, that you're remaining in integrity with yourself?
That's a very good question. And I'm thinking about for people who are not spiritual.
It can
And
be it can be spiritual, it can be any of the above.
yeah, I would recommend that you surround yourself with people who hold you accountable
Mm,
and people who inspire you to be authentic.
mm,
I have become over the years very specific about the energy that I want around me and the friends that I want around me. Like you mentioned earlier, I can feel energy. I protect my energy. As an empath, sometimes it's overwhelming if I don't know how to control it. But I always surround myself with people who know me, know who I am, understand what I care about, and would hold me accountable because I'm not perfect, Matt.
mhm, mhm.
I don't want to sit here and for people to think that I'm perfect. I am not. But I have my daily practices that help me connect with my values. And so for me is, meditation and journaling and going for a walk with my dog. Find that practice that works for you and find your tribe. Find those people that have similar values, can hold you accountable, can challenge you at times when needed, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Because this is all a journey, it's not a destination, and we are growing every day. And that's why whenever I make a mistake or something doesn't go the way I want it to go, I always ask myself, what is this here to teach me?
Yeah.
Like, what is this here to teach me? This is here to teach me something. What can I learn from this? And so I have a lot of compassion for myself too. I would share that. I hope it
That's
helps your
great. That's
listeners.
great. No, it's the idea of either you win or you learn, and there is no such thing as losing, because you
Exactly.
discovered a way not to do it, and then you'll never go that path again. And then I love the idea of having people that hold you accountable, because I think that can be a bit of a hurdle for people to get over, because once you have someone that's like, hey, you said this mattered and you're not actually living or you're not doing things that would say it
Yeah.
matters, like that's conflict, and it's hard to sit with that conflict, but that's what
Yeah.
we need to remain in that
Or
zone
even
of
ask you
growth.
questions like, even someone who would say, Elaine, I know you for being this way, and I noticed this happened. Do you want to talk about it? Not with judgment,
Yeah.
just a conversation of, oh my God, I noticed this. I've never seen you react this way if it
Yeah.
happens. Are you okay? Is there something happening? Do you want to talk? And I know that this is probably harder for men in the way that they've been brought up, and I'm hoping that we can change that too, because
Yeah.
we all need our tribes where we could
Yeah.
be ourselves and be vulnerable, which is another superpower. Just being vulnerable, being yourself, and not being afraid of saying the wrong thing, because that's another lesson will come if you do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I want to end it here and say, if someone was following in your footsteps, whether they were in tech, they're trying to get to the C-suite, they're not seeing people that look like them, what would be the last words of advice you would give them?
One thing that I would say is that it's okay to not have everything figured out. I did not know that I would be a CIO or a CTO. I did not know that I would run an IT department. I remember going into liberal arts because I didn't even know what I wanted to major in initially. And I think we're putting so much pressure on ourselves at times, trying to have all the answers. And what I learned through my journey, Matt, is that sometimes I was thinking too small.
Hmm.
The dreams that I had for myself were too small. And I had to learn to let go and release because God or the universe plans were bigger than the ones I had for myself. um, and know your worth. I believe that we teach people how to treat us, and so your words matter. Be mindful and be comfortable being uncomfortable. It's gonna help you along the way.
If you want to hear more stories like this one, just search for What's Your Story with Matt's Story wherever you listen to podcasts. Click the follow so you don't miss out on any of our future episodes. And please leave a rating and a comment so others can find the pod as well. And lastly, if you want to follow me and see what I'm up to, just go to LinkedIn and search for Matt's Story.